أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. We continue with verse number 213. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين. Mankind were a single community, then Allah sent the prophets as bearers of good news and as warners. وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه, and He sent down with them the book with the truth, that it may judge between the people concerning that about which they differed. Last time we talked about the meaning of men were one community, and there were different views about it, but we can go for the view which says until Noah time men did not have much disputes about different matters. Their conscience were working well, and also the idea of God that they had since the time of Adam alayhi salam, it was not very far away from the truth. By the time of Nuh alayhi salam, or of course a bit before that, because then Nuh was sent, great disagreement came, idolatry came, people started to worship idols in a very preposterous way, and also the conscience of the people were somehow dimmed, and they started to exploit each other, they started to unjustly treat each other, and Allah sent the messengers. So كَانَ النَّاسُ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا, men were a single community, then they disagreed. It is implied in the sort of context of the verse. Then they disagreed, then Allah sent the prophets. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ. And this was the beginning of Sharia, the beginning of sending books. Before that, the prophets did not have books. There were prophets, of course, among people, but they didn't have books. Here, of course, the distinguishing feature is that these prophets coming from now on, they had books with them. فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ النَّبِيِّينَ مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ. So Allah sent the messengers, the prophets, they as warners and as bearers of good news about the hereafter. And apparently the concept of hereafter had been also tarnished and a point of disagreement at that time before Noah. For the single community, they didn't have any disagreement about hereafter, that there is death and then there is life after death, but they started to disagree on that as well. So the messengers came to give good news for those who behave themselves rightly and correctly, that after life they have a good place, and to warn the others. مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ وَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ. He sent down the book with them with justice. Haqq here may mean different things. Haqq usually may mean different things. It may mean justice, it may mean truth, it may mean explanation of the truth. But here we may regard haqq as both, because the disagreement was not only about the truth, it was about the way people treated each other as well. So the book came with a law that set down the boundaries of justice for them, and also the truth about God, about human life, philosophy of life, about afterlife. These were, of course, haqq. فَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِيَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ فِيمَا اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ. So that Allah judge between people in what they disagreed. Apparently, we didn't need God to judge between us before that. Our conscience should have been enough for us to guide us. However, because these injustices came, because disagreement came, and also because very queer ideas about God came about, and worshipping idols came into being, then Allah judged between people by the messengers. أنزل معهم الكتاب. We know that there are two types of books that Allah sends with prophets. First of all, there are many prophets who don't have any book at all. They just receive revelation in terms of guidance, either for themselves or for others as well, but without having any book. Some prophets have books in which there is no legislation. It's only wisdom, it's only guidance in the terms of how human beings should conduct themselves morally. This is called Zabur in the Quran. And this is the book that was given to Dawood alayhi salam. But Allah sent 5 books, and is usually not called kutub. It's called kitab, meaning that all these books were one actually. In Surah Fatir we have وَأَن يُكَذِّبُوكَ, if they belie you and reject you, فَقَدْ كَذَّبَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, those who were before you as well belied and rejected. جَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَبِالزُّبُرِ وَبِالْكِتَابِ الْمُنِيرِ. Their messengers came with bayinat or miracles, of course. They brought the miracles, and they brought them zubur. Zubur is the plural of zabur. So many books we gave to all these 124,000 prophets. جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات وبالزبر. It doesn't say وبالكتب. It says وبالكتاب المنير, and the enlightening book. Now the enlightening book are the books given to Noah alayhi salam, to Musa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa, Isa, and Muhammad, peace be on them all. These are Quran calls them kitab, not kutub. It means that the essence of all of these kutub were one. The Quran and the Torah and Suhuf Ibrahim wa Musa, they were all the same thing, giving the one message. It was an enlightening book. So that's why most of the Mufassirin here have said that when Allah says وَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, mean وَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكُتُبِ. Allah sent down kutub, books with them. Kutub is the plural of kitab. But as I said, Allah has a sort of point here to tell us why He uses kitab instead of kutub, saying that all these books were one thing that we sent. And it's mentioned in many different ayat in the Quran, like for example, شرع in Surah Shura, شرع لكم من الدين ما وصى به نوحا والذي أوحينا إليك وما وصينا به إبراهيم وموسى وعيسى أن أقيموا الدين ولا تتفرقوا فيه. He has legislated for you the same thing that He legislated for Noah, for Ibrahim, for Musa and Isa, that hold up not religions, hold up their religion. I have mentioned it repeatedly that there are not different religions sent by Allah. It's only one religion sent by God. And Quran is very clear about this one religion. أَفَا غَيْرَ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ. Do they seek anything but the religion of God? Deen Allah. Of course, we then somehow, due to different contexts, backgrounds, cultures, somehow change these religions to our taste, this religion, one religion to our taste, and it becomes religions. However, initially it's only one religion. So the kitab which is sent to Ibrahim, Nuh, Musa, Isa is the same as the kitab which is sent to Muhammad, peace be upon him. ما يقال لك إلا ما قد قيل للرسل من قبلك. Nothing is said to you except what was said to the messengers before you. It's all the same. So أنزل معهم الكتاب ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه, so that Allah judges between people, rules between people, over people, about what they disagreed. So as I said, what they actually disagreed about. it was that disagreement which caused these books to come down, legislation come down, when human beings somehow deviated from its fitra, from its conscience, and started to exploit against their conscience. We know that exploitation of others is against our conscience. Moving away from justice is against our conscience. And by conscience, I mean what Allah has put in our fitrah. So when they deviated from that conscience, then Allah sent the books to judge between them. However, that deviation caused them to even disagree about the interpretation of these books, the book that we sent down, about how they have to interpret it. Every group wanted to interpret the book based on their own vested interests, their own ideas, their own views. And this is what is mentioned in Surah Anbiya as well. فَتَفَرَّقُوا أَمْرَ إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. This, what we have said about the previous prophets, is your ummah, is your millah, is your religion. What other prophets have mentioned is the same as your religion, but people started to somehow make this into different groupings, different religions and such things. فَتَفَرَّغُوا أَمْرَهُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ زُبُرًا. They made it into different books. كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِمْ فَرِحُونَ. Then these were not anymore religions. These were like political parties. These were like advocating different groups with different ideas. They were not religious anymore. Allah calls them hizb. كُلُّ حِزْبٍ بِمَا لَدَيْهِمْ فَرِحُونَ. So they disagreed. However, who disagreed on them, on these books? Those who were disbelievers, those who were opposing belief in God, belief in hereafter, who were atheists, so to speak, because atheism is a very, very deep-rooted thought at the time of Nuh, before Nuh, which led to the coming of Nuh alayhi salam. Atheism was there. Did atheists started to somehow distort these books, deviate from what we said? No. Those who believed in it started to do it. And they started to make religions out of one religion of God. وَمَا اخْتَلَفَ فِيهِ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ. No one actually opposed this or disagreed with about the content of what we had sent, except those who were given it. Those believers, the companions of those prophets who brought these books, they started to disagree about it, disagree about its contents. فَمَا اخْتَلَفَ فِيهِ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ. But those who were given it, in the first place, of course, goes back to the very people who were with the prophets. This is what we understand from the verse. The very people who were with the prophets started to decide. These are the people who were given the book. Then, of course, their followers are those who followed them. They were, so to speak, tabi'un of those companions. They followed their disagreements. So, وَمَا اخْتَلَفَ فِيهِ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. Were they innocent in these disagreements? No, they were not innocent. Because they disagreed after clear signs came to them. After clear signs came to them. These clear signs cannot be miracles for disbelievers, as we understand from the verse, because these are the people who were given the book, who had accepted the book. They started to disagree. So this should not refer to miracles for the disbelievers. Clear signs, clear explanation of what they had to do came to them, but they started to disagree. Out of what? Out of not understanding, out of disagreement, out of lack of proof? No. بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ. Out of jealousy, transgression, and injustice, wrongdoing. As we have here the explanation of dhulm. Baghi here is given by Tabrasi in Majma' al-Bayan, dhulman wa hasadan wa talaban lirra'asa. They wanted to be leaders themselves, and they were jealous about some, and of course it was dhulm and injustice and wrongdoing. Now, the question is here is a very, very essential question, because this issue has been reiterated in different places of the Quran, that people started to disagree after the prophets, after the books were given to them, out of jealousy, baghyan baynahum. It's mentioned in Surah Shura, it's mentioned in other surahs as well, and in Surah Baqarah. So, isn't disagreement in interpretation of the book a natural thing? I mean, when a book is revealed, or any text that we read, we have different understandings. And could these different understandings be based on jealousy and wrongdoing, or differences of opinion? Of course, we can have differences of opinion. We are not responsible for our opinions if it's based on, of course, goodwill and good intention. Opinions differ. And it may be based on our background, it may be based on the level of our intelligence, may be based on level of education, and Allah is not going to somehow put us on the spot or question us regarding what we are not responsible for. We have this very famous hadith from A'immah alayhimus salam, that whatever is God-given, you are not responsible about it. Whatever you do with the God-given, you are responsible about it, isn't it? That's very clear. This is the justice, this is the adl that Adliya, Shia, and Mu'tazila believe about. It's adl. Whatever is God-given, you are not going to be questioned about. You are not responsible. What you do with the God-given is, of course, your responsibility. Now, it's very clear. We are sitting in this room, of course, we are as many as we are, and when we read the text, we may have different understandings of it. It's not in our control. So why God is condemning them for this disagreement? That people, for example, Mu'tazila and Ash'aris, they had disagreement about many things, about the description of God, about human responsibility, free will, predestination. But can we say that they were responsible for what they viewed about these things? We read a verse of the Quran, we form an opinion without any preconception, without any bias. We may read a verse, we may understand different things from it. So why disagreement is criticized so strongly here, that they did it out of hasad? Did Ash'ari, for example, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari opposed his Mu'tazili teachers because he had jealousy, because he had hasad, or because it was his opinion? Now, so what does this mean? That وَمَا اخْتَلَفَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَ وَمَا اخْتَلَفَ فِيهِ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. It is not talking about opinions and differences of opinion. It's talking about a benchmark, someone after the prophets that prophets appointed and people started to disagree about it. They didn't want to follow. This is the only way that we can say this disagreement was out of jealousy and injustice, dhulm. بغيا بينهم. It happened after every prophet. And I think this is a very strong argument in the Quran, that prophets should have someone to remove disagreement after them. And if people start to disagree about that someone who removes disagreement, then of course they wonder, and they cannot get the truth of the book, and they become, of course, criticized by Allah. They are liable to be criticism by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that why did you disagree? Why you sought ri'asa, or leadership for yourself, without having this dispute about who should be a successor of the Prophet was there since the time of Adam alayhi salam. According to our narrations, which is a bit different from the mainstream narration of disagreement between Habil and Qabil, the fighting between Qabil and Habil was because of who should be the successor of Adam alayhi salam. Adam wanted to appoint a wasi for himself, and he appointed Habil, and Qabil became jealous. So it started from there. However, after these prophets came, they gave new signs, but after every prophet, after Musa, about Yusha, after Isa alayhi salam, about Simon Peter, Shamun, which is very clear they did not accept his Messiah, and they created their own ideas, and after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. This is what we can understand from the verse. Otherwise, people disagreeing in their opinions is not something that Allah can criticize. He has given us these differences in understanding and in our opinions. So this idea that disagreement cannot be removed in religion unless there is someone as the ultimate judge, someone as having ultimate knowledge about religion should be there to judge between them. There's this very interesting story that someone came from Syria to Medina and went to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam and said that I am a man of kalam and fiqh and Quran. I know about theology, I know about jurisprudence and law, and I know about Quran. I have come to debate with you about imamah. And well, he was very polite. He said, I want to debate with your students. And Imam said, okay, you start. So one of his students started to talk to him and said that on what basis you want to debate with me? On the basis of Quran or on the basis of Sunnah? He said, on the basis of Quran. And he said, okay, can Quran remove our disagreement? He said, yes, of course, Quran can remove all disagreements. He said, so you have come here to debate with the Quran while we all believe in the Quran and we all have disagreements. So the Quran cannot remove disagreements. It's not possible because we have different understandings and different interpretations. A Sunni reads the Quran and all Sunni tenets and beliefs and history they understand from the Quran. A Shia reads the Quran, all Shia tenets, Shia history, Shia understanding. Mu'tazilis read the Quran, they understand Mu'tazili faith. Ash'aris read the Quran, they understand Ash'ari faith because it is open to interpretation. And we have different interpretations. There should be someone to remove this. And then, of course, later on when the discussion went through, he agreed that there should be someone there to remove this disagreement. And then he asked Hisham ibn Hakam there that, okay, who is this someone? He said, he's sitting in front of you. This is the someone who removes the disagreement. And of course, the argument continued until he was convinced. Now, in Khutbah Fadakiyah of Fatima Zahra Salamullah alayha, where she actually explains at the beginning, in the introduction to her khutbah, explains the philosophy behind different legislations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُم مِّنَ الشِّرْكِ. He legislated, he asked you to have faith so that you become purified from shirk. وَالصَّلَاةَ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. He legislated salat so that it removes kibr and arrogance from you, until it comes, it talks about everything, zakat and siyam and hajj and jihad, and says, وَطَاعَتَنَا نِظَامًا لِلْمِلَّةِ. Allah has legislated that we should be obeyed so that the faith finds some order. Not everyone says what they believe about faith. Not everyone say what they want to they understand. وَإِمَامَتَنَا أَمَانًا لِلْفُرْقَ. And our imamah, of course, by our, she means Ahlul Bayt. Our imamah is put there as a protection against disagreement, against becoming different groups, and different sects. And also the same thing is mentioned by Imam al-Riza alayhi salam in Ilal al-Shara'i. Saduq reports a hadith which someone asked Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Riza alayhi salam, فَلِمَا جُعِلَ أُولِي الْأَمْرِ وَأُمِرَ بِطَاعَتِهِمْ, or فَلِمَا جَعَلَ أُولِي الْأَمْرِ وَأَمَرَ بِطَاعَتِهِمْ. Why Allah has put ulul amr, people who should be followed, who have the final say in everything. This is ulul amr, final say in everything. Why He has commanded us to obey them? He said, لِعِلَلًا كَثِيرًا, for many different reasons. One of them, this Ilal al-Shara'i is very interesting because the person asks, apparently this person is Fazl ibn Shazan. He asks about different things from the Imam, and everything he asks, for example, why Allah has legislated Salat, why Allah has legislated fasting, the Imam says for many different reasons, and then he explains. Now here, why Allah has actually asked us to follow ulul amr. منها أنه لو لم يجعل لهم إماما قيما أمينا حافظا مستودعا لدرست الملة وذهب الدين وغيرت السنة والأحكام ولزاد فيه المبتدئون ونقص منه الملحدون وشبهوا ذلك على المسلمين. If there was not an imam who was a protector, a trustee, a securer, and someone in whose the knowledge, the ultimate knowledge was placed, then the faith, the religion, and its tenets would have been worn out, and deen would have been removed. Sunnah of the Prophet would have been changed, and things could have been added to it, reduced from it, taken away from it, and this would have become, of course, that would have confused the Muslimin, the followers. And also, we find everyone is not completely knowledgeable about everything. People are not perfect in their understanding, are not perfect in their knowledge when it comes to the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet. And they have lots of disagreements and different opinions amongst themselves. فَلَوْ لَمْ يَجْعَلْ لَهُمْ قَيِّمًا حَافِظًا لِمَا جَاءَ بِهِ الرَّسُولُ صلى الله عليه وآله لَفَسَدُوا عَلَى نَحْوٍ مُبَيَّنٍ. If there was not someone who was guardian and protector of faith for what the Prophet, peace be upon him, brought, then the corruption of faith would have come forth. وَغَيَّرَتِ الشَّرَائِعُ وَالسُّنَنُ وَالْأَحْكَامُ وَالْإِيمَانُ. Iman would have been changed, Shariah and Ahkam would have been changed. So what I understand from this, that مَا اخْتَلَفَ فِيهِ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوهُ إِلَّا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتُ. Ikhtilaf is natural. Different understandings, disagreements, difference of opinion is natural. We cannot actually stop ourselves forming opinions. But Allah has put a benchmark, someone that we have to follow so that the disagreement wouldn't come. And people did not follow that benchmark, بَغْيًا بَيْنَهُمْ, out of jealousy, out of wrongdoing and injustice. And however, so if that is the case, why the religion is there? If people disagree, they did not follow, the religion was changed, everything. However, this was in itself a test to see who believes really, who disbelieves, who believed superficially and who believed deeply. فَهَدَى اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَمَا اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ مِنَ الْحَقِّ بِإِذْنِهِ. Allah guided the true believers. The true believers through what they disagreed. So this disagreement did not harm the true believers. بِإِذْنِهِ, it may mean بِعِلْمِهِ, with his knowledge of the hearts and he guided them, or bilutfihi, so he had graced them with the guidance because they had true faith and they were guided. Wallahu yahdi man yasha'u ila siratin mustaqim. Allah guides whoever he wishes. As we said, wishes, whoever he wishes means that whoever is complying with the standards of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever is qualified for that guidance, Allah will guide. Some people say, Wallahu yahdi man yasha means Wallahu yahdi man yasha'u al-hidayah. Whoever wants to be guided, Allah will guide them. This is another meaning of Wallahu yahdi man yasha ila siratin mustaqim. So siratun mustaqim is faith without disagreement, without baghi and hasad. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin.
Thank you very much, Jalil Ahsant. Very interesting but a little confusing, but anyway, open the floor for further discussion. So brothers and sisters, any brothers or sisters who wants to start the debate?
Once people are thinking of a question, can I just make an announcement?
Yeah, sure.
I've got two announcements.
For those of you who are not on the Tafsir, Sunday morning Tafsir email group, can I ask you to please do so? Mahbub Asadi here will put his email address in a moment. Has a list of all the people who come on Sunday morning Tafsir classes. In case it is cancelled for any reason as an emergency, say it snows heavily, etc., you don't want to be dragged out on Sunday morning, so you would like to be informed. And he is religiously, every Saturday we get a message whether there's a tafsir class tomorrow or not. Yes. So, Mahbub Asadi, if you haven't given your email address, please give it to him. And if you switch that on as well, anyone if you're tall enough to press that, then we'll put it on the screen. My second announcement is that we're exceedingly lucky that we have Shaykh Bahmanpour available for personal, one-to-one consultation on an absolutely confidential basis. Absolute confidentiality. Maintained, Said actually spends either a morning or an afternoon or an evening or sometimes a weekend. It runs about once a week or sometimes once a fortnight at the building next door, that you can book a consultation with him. Whatever the issue that you might want to discuss about, whether it's questions that you never got cleared here, Islamic history, fiqh, whatever, personal issues, business issues, financial issues, whatever it may be, just to have a chat with a scholar of his caliber, and we have a person like him in our surrounding, yet we don't take the full advantage. So just to facilitate that, we will organize that. And inshallah, if Sayyid agrees, we also want to arrange a telephonic consultation as well, if possible, that Zuhair is working on. So the person responsible for that is Zuhair Baiji, and his email address will appear there as well, and his mobile number as well. So feel free to book. And can I tell you, absolutely, not even the trustees know who are the names booked. Only Zuhair is aware of that. So, and pass the message on to the larger Shia community of UK as well. As I said, telephone consultations will also start soon. That's all I wanted to say. Please give them.
Thank you, Sheikh. So brothers and sisters, we have now floor open for further discussion.
You mentioned benchmarking, but different benchmarkers or mujtahids could have different interpretations. And sometimes one gets criticized if that particular benchmark is not sort of approved by the mass followers. Do you understand my question? So, for example, the muqallid will be different, and in this modern era, new ones are cropping up every day. So, the follower of that particular muqallid, will they be punished for that?
Very good clarification, thank you. No, what I talked about benchmark is not about maraj or things like that. It's about the wasi of the Prophet, who should be followed without any question, who should be followed without any doubt after the Prophet as someone who has full knowledge. You know, our mujtahideen or maraj, they don't have full knowledge. They actually surmise in a way based on their deductions from the sources what is the ruling, okay? And we follow them, knowing, of course, the limitations of their knowledge. But there is always someone after the Prophet, and it has been through the history, that they are the benchmark of faith. They know, they do not surmise or they do not deduce things. They know for certain. And these are the awsiya of the prophets. And in our Shia belief, these are the imams who have that knowledge. And if people reject them, then they come to disagreements about everything, about description of God, about rulings, about everything. That's what I mean by benchmark. Otherwise, as we don't have our imam available, yes, we have to follow, of course, these sort of limited knowledge that we can acquire. As a community, we can acquire. Of course, these maraj are from the community, isn't it? So as a community, they acquire this knowledge, we follow them. This is the best we can do. But when it comes to the real knowledge, it's only the imam who has the real knowledge. And that's why we follow their hadith as the real knowledge of the sunnah of the Prophet.
Thank you, Sheikh. Any sister or brother?
Muqallid, sorry, just muqallid is someone who follows a marja, and muqallad is a marja. So usually, because we don't have knowledge ourselves, we rely on those who have acquired that knowledge to tell us how, for example, we have to practice our faith.
So how does it apply in this day and age, people we are following as a muqallid?
No, in this day and age, first of all, because that benchmark is not available, is in hiding, is in ghaiba, okay, in occultation. So we do not have access to that. And this is not because Allah doesn't want to put a benchmark for us. It's because people do not accept and do not receive. Just like at the time of A'imma. I'm now talking about the Shia narration, of course. At the time of A'imma alayhimus salam, the imams were there, but they were either in prison or they were killed at a very young age, like Imam al-Jawad, for example, 25 years old. Or people were barred from accessing them, so there was no point anymore. People disagreed and they didn't want to refer to them. Now, so this has happened to us as victims. We are, in a sense, victims of that disagreement now. Now we have to somehow do with the limited knowledge that we can gain from the Quran, from the Sunnah of the Prophet, and from the sayings of the Imams who were allowed to talk, like Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, Imam al-Baqir, who were allowed to talk, Imam Ali for a limited period, of course. This is what we can have. Now, we are not responsible for that disagreement. As I said, we are victims of that disagreement. Whether Shia or Sunni, everyone is victim of that initial disagreement. And then we have to try our best to find the most authentic way to interpretation of the Quran and to Sunnah of the Prophet.
So, Sheikh, do you mean to say, for example, in the time of Imams or at the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, whoever, we had to accept everything what he said, or don't we have our own opinion, for example?
There's no opinion against the saying of the Prophet, because Prophet doesn't talk of from opinion. His knowledge is not based on opinion.
No, but we see, for example, we are all at different level of intelligence. We may sometimes understand or not, or we may have some counter argument not for a matter of arguing, but for understanding or discussion, like we are discussing now. Or do we have to?
Yes, I mean asking for explanation from the Imam, you mean? I don't understand. You mean that we could have an opinion against the opinion of an Imam, or what?
Maybe sometimes because, say for example, if the Imam is saying we have to go for the jihad, and then somebody might have a different opinion saying that why now, or in a different way, or what there could be something else. Can't pinpoint an example at the moment.
No, for the Prophet and an Imam who is actually taking the position of Prophet, Imam, infallible Imam. No, they should be followed. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا لِيُطَاعَ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. We have not sent any messenger unless we require from people to follow him. With the knowledge of God, with the permission of God, it's the knowledge of God that they are actually commanding as a source of their commands. No, there's no disagreement there. You can disagree with Maraji, but not with the Imams, of course.
Thank you. Okay, brother, I think there was somebody there before. I'll give Murtaza.
Assalamu alaikum. Just a very quick question. You mentioned after each of the prophets, it was not necessarily the followers of the companions, but it was more the companions who, in front of the clear signs, chose to reject it or disagree. So essentially on the Day of Judgment, it's not necessarily the followers who choose to follow a companion's opinion, but it's more the companions who will be punished for the disagreement.
Yeah, as I said, we are all now victims of the original disagreement, isn't it? The original disagreement, whether we are Shia or Sunni, we are all victims of that disagreement. So Allah would deal with us much more leniently than those who created that disagreement.
Yeah, thanks. Any sisters? No sister. Murtaza?
Could I just ask one follow-up question to that? Although there were clear signs at that time, are there no clear signs at this time as well for us to choose and decide for ourselves as well?
There may be, but it needs a deep investigation, which is not in the power of everyone. And that's why I said we are victims, okay? But at that time it was very clear. In our opinion, in Shia opinion, the Prophet, peace be upon him, took the hand of Imam Ali on the day of Ghadir and said, Man kuntu mawla, fahada aliyun mawla, Allahumma wali man wala wa. It was very clear. There was no room for confusion at that time, in our opinion. Of course, later on the confusion came, because then the different interpretations of that incident was provided, and people started to somehow politically affiliate with this group or that group, and confusion came.
Just one final comment.
Go.
Could you not say, for me, clear signs essentially means the breath that we breathe, the air that we breathe, the signs around us to prove.
This is about God.
Yes, and then I guess the follow-on from that is the link between that. So you're saying the clear signs are more about the.
There are bayanat about Allah, which is actually the origin of faith, right? Yeah, it's at every time. And everyone has that bayanat. As soon as they are born and they realize where they live, these bayanat are there. This is about disagreement in tenets of faith. For example, who should we follow after the Prophet? Or, for example, what was the right sunnah of the Prophet in such and such practice? This is not something that we can find out for ourselves. It's very difficult.
Thank you.
Yes, sisters.
Thank you, as usual, for your beautiful explanation. Just when the Quran was revealed, it was revealed, Rasulullah was saying there was no written at that time. So Ashab were remembering word by word. So at time there was a possibility, I know Allah has taken a guarantee that there won't be any change in it, but at times Ashab might have recited something differently before it was written down on the parchment. Is there a possibility of some change?
Actually, anyone who study the history of compilation of the Quran would come to no doubt that the Quran was compiled in a perfect manner at the time of the Prophet and afterwards, and companions were very meticulous about preserving what they had in their memory and what they had written. It was not only memories, they had written, they had their own copies. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud had his own
Written
copy.
at the same time? Was it written at the same time?
Yes,
When
yes,
was
at
it?
the same time. It was written at the time of the Prophet. And then at the time of the first Caliph, Abu Bakr, he commissioned Zayd ibn Sabit to write an official copy. And he wrote it in a matter of a year or two, or more than that, but no one was using that Quran, which was written at the time of Abu Bakr. The copies of the Qurans which were available, copied from Quran of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and Ubay ibn Ka'b, these were the copies which were common among Muslims. And that's why that copy was kept in the archives. And then at the time of the third Caliph Uthman, because the copies which they had made from these various versions of the Quran, not versions of course, the copies that the companions had written, started to somehow differ from them, and people had copied it wrongly, so to speak, and because there were many non-Arabs who had converted to Islam and they were reciting it wrongly sometimes, not the scholars, the lay people, so they decided to somehow standardize all the copies. So they destroyed every copy, and the companions of the Prophet who were most learned in the Quran and had their own copies at the time of the Prophet, like Ubay ibn Ka'b, at the time of Uthman, they were commissioned to write a standardized Quran. And that was done very meticulously. The copy of Ubay ibn Ka'b was the benchmark, and then it was compared with all other copies. So 12 of the most learned companions of the Prophet, initially under Zayd ibn Sabit, then because Zayd ibn Sabit apparently did not have full sort of qualifications for that, under Ubay ibn Ka'b, and of course under the supervision of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they produced that standardized Quran, and they made 7 copies of it, sent to different 7 centers of Islamic territory, and all the Qurans were then copied from them. So anyone who knows this history would understand that it was not possible for the Quran to be changed, whether altered or things taken away from it or things added to it. It was impossible, and that's why we see during the history no Quran has been found to have any difference from the Quran that we recite. Yes, in recitation, for example, some people recited something with kasra or some with fatha. That is of course natural, and it is a proof as well that they all followed the same Quran with different pronunciations. That's fine, there's no problem with that.
Thank you. Murtaza?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Just coming back to the verse itself. So it says the books were sent. So I'm just trying to understand what you said. So was the book sent as a guide for people to actually look at what's the truth? But you said that God would judge them. So the book wasn't sent down for people to judge amongst themselves, or so I'm just trying to get.
No, you know, because God is not amongst us to speak, He sends a book. That book judges, isn't it? I mean, for example, we disagree whether we have to drink alcohol, whether we should be allowed to drink alcohol or not. This, as a matter of fact, this has been a disagreement since the beginning of production of wine, okay, whether we can drink or we cannot drink. So when there was such a disagreement, and some said, yes, there's no harm, some said there is harm, then Allah judged amongst them with the book that you are not allowed. As an example, you see, and many different other things. For example, how much we are allowed, for example, to exploit other people. Should we exploit or employ? For example, these things which were somehow murky in conscience of people, these were the things that Allah judged by the book, in the sense that He said, this is allowed, this is not allowed.
Right. Nizar?
I got a very quick question and then a little bit longer one. The quick question is that you may not have the knowledge about that. Is there any WhatsApp Quran translation version that you recommend to particularly download, or the other question being not to use because of the way it's translated? Do you have any knowledge on that?
No, what on
Fine,
WhatsApp?
okay.
No,
Let me carry on with my next question. If you look at this global world of 7 billion people and all of us in different religions and different divides, and look at the troubles in the world today, and if you go back to the original message is there's one God and there is life hereafter. Those are the two key cardinals, isn't it? With respect, all the prophets were simply messengers. If Allah had any other way of passing that message to us, He might not have used the messengers. Yes? Message is quite simple. God, consciousness of God, abiding what God says and says do and don't, and prepare yourself for the life hereafter. So you lead your life accordingly. I'm sure somebody must have already done this work, but has anybody just downloaded all the different books, including Quran, and found out a generic book? In other words, something that is present in all those books, even if it's down to only 20 pages, and call it the religion of Adam and Eve. And let the world just, and I think 80% of the world are probably believers in God, whichever way they look at it. I guess, I have got no evidence of that, but my feeling is that 80%. If 80% of all the people became believers of religion of Adam and Eve and nothing more, wouldn't that be a much more peaceful world to live in? I know it's very hypothetical, but if we did do that, and then as far as practice is concerned, you have your God. Whichever way you want to practice, you practice it at home. Whether you want to say salah, whether you want to do puja, whether you want to do whatever.
Do what puja?
No, puja is not necessarily idol worship. No, whichever method you have of praying, or whichever method you have of communicating with your God, whatever you do it in your privacy of your home. But let's out in society, we all behave, talk, do with God consciousness according to that new Bible, not a Bible, the new book of Adam and Eve.
Well, in the book of Adam and Eve, there was no instruction how we have to deal with our in-laws, isn't it? Because there were no in-laws. In the book of Adam and Eve, if there was such a thing, of course, how we behave ourselves in society, because there was no society, you know. So when population grows, needs would differ. And that's why the disagreements came gradually. Initially, there was no disagreement. It's fine, it's true. Allah sent the books so that to restore that original understanding and that original knowledge. But people started to differ in that as well. And then they made Christianity, Judaism, Islam as we standardize it today, these things like that, Shia, Sunni. You see, it's due to the, first of all, sheer population of mass of population of people, and also due to disagreements, different desires as well. And especially nowadays we have atheist societies as well who do not believe at all in God, and they present sort of trophies to most prominent atheists, things like that. So with the emergence of different societies in different geographical areas, different cultures, it becomes a bit difficult. However, we have the instruction in the Quran that when you are in society, you have to behave nicely with everyone. That's very good. And the same thing is in the Bible, in the Gospel as well, the same thing. So, yes, we can actually draw general ethical rulings, not, of course, theological, because theologically we may differ dramatically. Like, for example, Christians say Jesus is the Son of God. We say that God has no son or cannot be described in any way. So theologically we have dramatic differences. But ethically, I don't think we have any difference at all. I mean, because religious ethics is mainly based on conscience. And conscience in human beings are the same. And we all understand the same thing about conscientious behavior. And there is a translation of the Quran by Safi Kaskas and some other Christian scholar. Safi Kaskas is Muslim, is Christian. And you can search it. Then I don't remember the name now. The good thing about it is that they have footnotes, every verse of the Quran, about which you can find a reference in the Bible, whether Gospel or Old Testament, in the footnotes. And that's very nice. You can see the similarities, very similar ethical norms they have.
Thank you. Any sisters before we go back to brothers? No, this brother here at the back.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. Very quickly, if I could ask, just to go back to the point you mentioned earlier, maybe I misheard, but to be clarified, did you say that the Zabur, for example, is different to the scriptures that were sent down, to Kitab? Is there such thing as Zabur, which was a different book of guidance, or you said moral ethics, and Kitab was
Yes,
brought
they
down?
say the difference between Zabur and Kitab is that Kitab is usually a book of God which contains legislations, clear legislations. But Zabur may repeat those legislations. They don't have just legislation for themselves, but mainly, of course, we don't have many Zabur at our disposal. Only the Quran only talks about one specific Zabur. وَآتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ زَبُورًا. We gave Dawood a Zabur to Dawood. It doesn't mean that it was the name of his book. A Zabur we gave to Dawood. But Zabur is usually a book given to a prophet with regards to praising of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or, for example, moral values, how humans should conduct themselves spiritually, socially. These are the things which are contained in Zabur. These are the books not given to, of course, messengers as such. Just some prophets receive Zabur.
So is it, just from my understanding then, that Zabur and the books of morals preceded the books of then higher guidance, which came later to help
because
us?
The first book which contained legislation, as they put it, is the book revealed to Nuh alayhi salam. So before that, there may have been books given to the prophets. Of course, we don't know, but there may have been books given to prophets.
I ask because you read sometimes in the Quran that the Prophet was given kitab and hikmah. Or for example, when Allah is talking about Nabi Isa alayhi salam, وَيَعْلَمُهُ الْكِتَابُ وَالْحِكْمَةِ وَالتَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ. I wondered what's the difference and how to reconcile, and why was it necessary to mention that he's given kitab, hikmah, Tawrat, and Injil?
Now here, kitab, in this context, kitab means ruling. Like kutiba alaykum siyam. Siyam is written upon you. It's a ruling, okay? So yu'allimuhu al-kitab means we taught him rulings. That he could say, this is the ruling of God with regards to this matter. This is the ruling. So for example, in Surah Bayyina, we have Rasulun min Allah yatlu suhufan mutahhara fiha. In these suhuf of the Quran, kutubun qayyama. There are legislations, very profound and good legislations. So kitab sometimes means legislation, sometimes mean a book. So here when we have وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَالتَّوْرَاةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ, the rulings, the creed, belief about God, and then the specific books, Torah and Injil. But Kitab, of course, contains whatever is in Zabur as well. Not that Kitab is only legislation and doesn't contain what is in Zabur, like the Quran. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and sisters. Yeah. Shaykh, when you started your lecture, I think you started the way that you said there was one community and then people started to differ, so Allah sent the guidance. But then wasn't it meant to be like that, because Allah has created different types of peoples and different languages, so Allah would have sent the guidance. So what was the point of mentioning that you are one community and then you started, and then you differed, so we sent the guidance?
It means initially we didn't have any differences of opinion about God, about how we behave in society. We didn't have any difference of opinion initially. Then when disagreement came, the prophets were sent. Allah actually didn't want to see us like that, in confusion, in disagreement, so He sent the prophets.
But when Allah created people of different nature, different understanding standard, there's bound to be some kind of misunderstanding or disagreement.
Okay.
So then,
in the time when disagreement came, Allah sent the prophets. Not that Allah didn't know that disagreement will come. He knew that this is, of course, bound to happen, but unless disagreement should have come, there was no need for prophets to come and talk. And when disagreement came, then the prophets were sent.
Well, I'm still not clear, but anyway.
Yeah, you can. What is it?
I still haven't formulated the question properly or further question. But anyway, I'll think further about it.
Okay.
And then we'll come later on. One-to-one session maybe. Okay. Any brothers? Yeah.
Just one question, picking up on what you mentioned about the Zabur. Could the Hindu scriptures or some of the other scriptures that have been revealed earlier, could they be a Zabur?
Yes, very probable that the books that we read them today in a very different way, which very distantly go away from the real teachings of Tawheed, may have at the beginning be books which contained the true guidance. That's very, very, very probable, yeah.
Okay, any brothers or sisters? Anybody? No? Seems, thank you very much, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you very much. So we'll continue next week, inshallah?
Inshallah.